Now, we do not take lightly issues of vetting, issues of ensuring that we have the right person with the right aptitude to be part and parcel of the armed forces. So there is a filtration process, there's a filtration mechanism that is already put in place so that when we recruit, each of our recruits will pass through those, what I may call crucible for the purpose of understanding. So those filtration processes are there. But of course, we also know that we live in the same environment where these criminals also live. These criminals, each and every one of us, will come from families, and some of these families are also the families where many of these criminal elements, where they come from. So, in the light of that, of course, you can't run away from the fact that there are some who, for one reason or the other, may, go out of line, and that is the reason why every attempt they have made, we have discovered them by virtue of our intelligence, both overt and covert, and also institutionalizing the court-martial processes that have, made us to send them to jail. So those who, in the earlier discussion that we had, that I referred to as modes, it is from that, standpoint that they were dealt with, sent to jail, dismissed from the service. So it is not, we are not in any way going to be deterred by some of those reports that which you referred to. Many of those reports too could be exaggerated. But again, for me and for the leadership of the armed forces, one single case is bad enough, and that's why we take it very seriously.
We're talking about reports, General. There have been reports also that have been released by human rights groups, such as Amnesty International, on rights abuses by the military, including extrajudicial killings, and even in some instances, rape, sexual abuse of women, and all of that. What is the military doing under your watch to shake off these damning allegations against men of the armed forces?
Well, Amnesty International, I want to believe about you're referring to, past reports. And the recent reports of Amnesty International, I'm not aware that there are reports of the like that you just, mentioned. But of course, you need to also know that this insecurity that we're facing, there are many routes to it. There are many strands to it, and Amnesty International does not live here. When I say does not live here, the structure that they have are only by virtue of individuals. Only by virtue of those who, in one way or the other, build up their report from sometimes what they hear from people, other times what they feel that have happened. But beyond that, I want to assure you that the members of the armed forces, especially, will keep to the tenets of human rights limits. We are professional in form, we are professional in disposition, and so there are rules of engagement, and we strictly abide by them. And then, of course, within our OBAT, we have made provisions for human rights desk. So there are officers who, on a daily basis, their responsibility is to ensure that troops keep to the rules of engagement, ensuring that the limits of the international humanitarian law is kept, as they conduct their operation. So for me, I'm so proud proud of the armed forces that I lead, and I'd like to, tell not just the press, but the rest of the world, for them to know that if there were any issues of human rights violations in the past, certainly not as we have currently. Certainly not. It does not exist currently. And going forward, we'll keep refining the process. We'll keep refining, our approach to conduct of operations, and every Nigerian will be proud that they have the kind of armed forces that we have.
Right, thank you, General. But I want to draw your attention to news that broke last night about communal clashes in Cross River State, a community called Inco, where members of the armed forces are being accused of killing, raping, and burning down houses. I just want to bring that to your attention. You might want to comment on that specific allegation from last night, and also ask another question about the fact that our government, the Nigerian government, has expanded considerable resources procuring Super Tucano jets from the U.S. Are these planes now being used in combat missions, and how have they helped to suppress terrorist attacks?
All right, thank you. The incident in Nko community in Cross River as well as Obobra. Yes, it was not yesterday. It was actually 3 days ago. I'm aware, and the troops were never involved in any issue of raping and destruction. No, that's not correct. Rather, and I'm glad that you rightly mentioned it, that it was a communal clash. So, what is the business of the military in being involved in communal clash? But of course, because lives were being lost, and we have military deployment around those areas, it was on the basis of that the commanding officer of the unit went to go to redress the problem that he have. Now, getting to the scene, the communities, one of the communities, for whatever reason, because they were armed, they shot at the commanding officer, wounded him, and also wounded about 5 soldiers. And so, no officer would see his men being wounded when he has come to keep the peace. No soldier will stand idle and then see, citizens, unleashing mayhem, not amongst themselves only, but equally taking up arms against those who have come to bring sanity to the environment. So it was at that point that he insisted that those who shot at the commanding officer and the soldiers should be apprehended. In fact, let me tell you that in one of those communities, a former chief of naval staff, that's where he comes from. So would you think that the armed forces that he was a part of will now want to go and destroy his community? No. But you see, these are reports that are being peddled. Don't forget that there are 2 communities that were involved. Now, what is being peddled is that one community, that the military is, destroying one community. It only tells you that perhaps some individuals who may not have been happy with the intervention of the military may just come up with some form of falsehood and propaganda that could, dissuade the understanding of Nigerians about the matter. So, but what I need to assure you, and of course assure Nigerians, is that the military, it's apolitical, and we do not take sides. We are there to give support to the civil authority, in this case the police, especially on this matter of Unko and Obobra. So that's and I thought I needed to put that in context. Now, on the issue of Super Tucanos, yes, of course, we are grateful to the federal government for undertaking that huge investment, and those aircraft, those pieces of equipment have added to, the effort in redressing the insecurity that we have. And they've played their part. But of course, it's not that because we have gotten Super Tucano, then all our problems are solved. No, there are so many things that we still require. But I must say that Super Tucanos have actually added in redressing the problems that we have. And that's why, you find, that our operational gains are increasing on a daily basis. So as we build up our combat capability, then of course it aggregates to operational effectiveness in our operations.
Right, so CDS, as you talked about on call, as peace returned and is everything settled now in that area as regards that situation that happened? And secondly, in your own opinion, do you think that a political solution can help douse the violence, and the attacks allegedly being carried out, by the Eastern Security Network and the so-called unknown gunmen in the southeast, and concerning that, which a lot of people also to make allegations against the military, as regards, killings of people in the southeast and extrajudicial killings and the likes and things like that?
Rufai, I'm glad that you asked that question. Since the beginning of mankind, political solution, or if you like, military solution has never brought total peace, if you like, total resolution of a conflict. So for every conflict that the military have ever been involved, the military only lays the platform for other means of conflict resolution to be conducted. So in this case, of course, political solution lies at the root of the resolution of all crises. Whether it is Boko Haram, whether it is IPOB, whether it is all manner of agitations, there are things that that are, almost all of them must end within the purview of political settlement. Why? Because when we're talking about political settlement, we're also looking at issues of governance. So in the local governments across the length and breadth of the nation, what is the level of development? What is the level of empowerment of the citizens? How have we been able to provide, skills acquisition, that will enable citizens to not just be self-employed, but also be engaged in meaningful entrepreneurial, issues. The federal government, of course, is doing quite a lot. I'm sure you know the programs of youth empowerment that the federal government is doing. But let it also distill to the states and local governments, and not just having them in smaller numbers, smaller packets, but then let it be an exponential growth of entrepreneurial skills development and acquisition across the length and breadth of the country, so that those who perhaps what you may describe as idle hands will find something doing. So when they find something doing, then of course the propensity to engage in criminal enterprises will be reduced. Then the security agencies can now be free to be able to zero in on those who want to make criminal engagement their day-to-day engagement. Then so for me, this is the way to go, and I believe that yes, whatever suggestions that anybody has that could translate to political settlement of any crisis, of course, it would be a good thing to escalate it to the appropriate quarters for it to be implemented. But then that there are political solutions does not mean that we, as members of the armed forces, we just fold our hands to say, okay, a political solution could have solved this. So because it has not solved it, then we'll leave our nation to be born. No, certainly not. That's why, on a daily basis, members of the armed forces, you find that they are empowered to join to support the police and ensure that our land is not turned to turn to a jungle where law and order does not find its way. So this is precisely informs our engagement to the form that you now find across the 36 states of the Federation. So going forward, I believe that I listened to Abati when he was giving the primer for this interview, talking about the elections that are coming. We believe, and I'd like to assure you and assure Nigerians that the election 2023 will be conducted under a secured atmosphere. That's a guarantee that I want to leave with you on this interview and for Nigerians. That certainly is what we are working very closely with. We've mapped out our plans along with the police and other security agencies, and we're escalating all our operational engagements to ensuring that we provide security guarantees that will enable INEC and of course all those the stakeholders who are engaged in that exercise, which is a national exercise that the whole world is looking up to Nigeria for, that it will be conducted under a secured environment. That is a guarantee, and we are working very assiduously to ensuring that.
Well, thank you, General. I guess that will be all. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you.